The first time Adrian Castell saw the bruise on Elena's wrist, he made a decision that would shatter two lives and rebuild one. She was a waitress trying to disappear into the noise of his private dining room. He was a man who controlled half the city's underground and didn't believe in coincidence. What started as a glance became a war, against her husband, against her fear, against everything she thought she deserved. Some women get saved. Some women get claimed. Elena Voss got both, and it cost more than she ever imagined. Like this video, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches, and stay until the end, because what happens next will leave you breathless. The bathroom tiles were cold. Elena Voss registered that first, the chill seeping through her thin pajama pants into her hip bone, spreading across her ribs where they pressed against the floor. Then came the pain, dull and radiating, familiar in the worst way. Her jaw ached, her shoulder throbbed. The metallic taste in her mouth told her she'd bitten her tongue again. She opened her eyes slowly, squinting against the fluorescent light Ryan had left on. The bathroom door hung half open, and through it she could hear him moving around the bedroom, dresser drawers opening and closing, the clink of his belt buckle, the low murmur of him talking to someone on the phone. Business as usual. Her hands shook as she pushed herself upright, bracing against the toilet. The mirror caught her reflection and she looked away immediately, but not fast enough. The split lip was new. The bruise along her cheekbone wasn't. "You're pathetic," she whispered to the tile floor, because saying it to the mirror would mean looking again. Ryan's voice drifted closer. "Yeah, closing the deal tomorrow." "No, she's fine, just clumsy." A laugh, his laugh, the one that used to make her feel safe. Elena closed her eyes and counted to 20, the way the therapist she'd seen twice before Ryan found the bills had taught her. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. Compartmentalize. Survive. She heard the front door slam. The apartment went quiet. Moving carefully, testing each limb, she stood. The shower took 5 minutes to warm up in their building. Another thing Ryan complained about constantly, though he never actually called the landlord. She undressed slowly, dropping her clothes in the hamper, even though one sleeve was torn and there was blood on the collar. Washing them felt easier than throwing them away. Throwing things away meant admitting they were ruined. The hot water stung against her skin, but she welcomed it. Let it beat against her shoulders until the tension started to unknot. She didn't cry. She'd learned that crying in the shower wasted time, and she had work in 3 hours. By the time she stepped out, wrapped in a towel that had gone gray from too many washes, she'd already started the mental math. Foundation, the expensive kind, the one she'd bought with tips and hidden in her work locker. Concealer, powder, the scarf she could tie just so, like she was making a fashion statement instead of hiding fingerprints. Ryan had left coffee in the pot. Cold, but there. She poured it into a mug and drank it black, staring at the calendar stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a palm tree. A souvenir from a vacation they'd never taken. Thursday. Dinner shift. The restaurant would be busy, which meant good tips, which meant she could maybe replace the concealer that was running low. Small victories. She dressed in the bathroom with the door locked, even though she was alone. Jeans that didn't hug too tight, a long-sleeved black shirt despite the August heat. The makeup took 20 minutes. By the end, the woman in the mirror looked almost normal. Tired, sure, but normal. The split lip she covered with a dark lipstick and a lie she'd already practiced. Bit it eating a bagel. The restaurant was called Aurelius, which Elena thought was a pretentious name for a place that mostly served overpriced steak to men in expensive suits. But the tips were good, and the manager, Marco, didn't ask questions as long as she showed up on time and smiled at the customers. She took the bus because Ryan had taken the car. His car, he reminded her constantly, even though her name was on the insurance. The ride was 40 minutes of watching the city blur past. Women in yoga pants pushing strollers, teenagers smoking outside a convenience store, a man asleep on a bench with his shoes tucked under his head like a pillow. People living whole lives she'd never know. Aurelius sat tucked into a corner lot in the financial district, all dark wood and dim lighting, the kind of place where the hostess wore heels and the waitstaff moved like choreographed dancers. Elena liked it because once she walked through the employee entrance, she stopped being Elena Voss, bruised wife, college dropout, woman with nowhere to go. She became Elena, server, efficient and pleasant and temporarily valuable. "You look like hell," Marco said when she clocked in. "Thanks. You're a real charmer." He leaned against the office door frame, arms crossed. Marco was 50-something, gray at the temples, with the kind of face that had seen enough that nothing surprised him anymore. "You gonna make it through the shift?" "I'm here, aren't I?" "That's not what I asked." Elena tied her apron, checked her pockets for her order pad and pens. "I'll make it." Marco studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You're on section 3. We've got a private party in the back room at 8. Big spender. Don't screw it up." "When have I ever screwed it up?" There's a first time for everything. But he was smiling, just a little, and Elena took that as the closest thing to kindness she'd get today. The dinner rush hit at 6:30. Elena moved through her section on autopilot, menus, water, wine recommendations she'd memorized from the list Marco made them study. A couple celebrating an anniversary. A business dinner where nobody looked happy. A woman dining alone, reading a paperback between courses, and Elena felt a sharp pang of envy for that kind of solitude. Her feet ached. Her jaw ached. But she smiled and refilled glasses and pretended that everything was fine, because that's what people wanted. Nobody came to Aurelius to witness someone else's suffering. At 7:45, Marco found her near the kitchen. "Private party's here early. You ready?" Elena nodded, smoothing her apron. "How many?" "Just one," she blinked. "One person reserved the whole back room?" "Apparently. His name's on the list as Castell. Adrian Castell. Ring a bell?" It didn't. "Should it?" Marco shrugged. "Rich guy, likes his privacy. Be professional, don't hover, and for the love of Christ, don't spill anything on him." "Your confidence in me is overwhelming." "I mean it, Elena. This guy tips like he's trying to buy the building. Don't mess it up." She followed Marco through the main dining room toward the back, where a separate space, barely used except for special occasions, waited behind frosted glass doors. It was smaller, more intimate, with a single large table and lighting that could be adjusted to near darkness if requested. Tonight, it was set for one. Elena's first thought when she saw him was that he didn't look like someone who needed an entire room to himself. Her second thought was that maybe he did. Adrian Castell sat at the head of the table, leaning back in his chair with the ease of someone who'd never been told no. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it more than once, and a face that was handsome in a sharp, unapologetic way. Expensive watch, tailored suit, the kind of man who walked into rooms and made them rearrange themselves around him. He glanced up when she entered, and his gaze was immediate, direct. The kind of look that didn't just see you, it catalogued you. Elena's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral, professional. "Good evening," she said, approaching the table. "I'm Elena. I'll be taking care of you tonight." "Will you?" It wasn't a question. His voice was low, controlled, with the faintest trace of something she couldn't place. Amusement, maybe. Or assessment. She set the menu in front of him, poured water into his glass. "Can I start you off with a drink?" "Whiskey?" "Neat. The Macallan 18 if you have it." "We do." "Good." He didn't look at the menu. He looked at her. Elena shifted her weight slightly, kept her hand steady. "Would you like a few minutes to decide on dinner or—" "What happened to your lip?" Her breath caught. Just for a second, barely noticeable, but she saw the way his eyes narrowed slightly, like he'd been waiting for exactly that reaction. "I bit it," she said smoothly. "Bagel mishap this morning." He didn't believe her, she could tell. But he didn't push, just leaned back in his chair and finally glanced at the menu. "I'll have the ribeye. Medium rare. No sides. Any appetizers?" "No." "Dessert?" "We'll see." Elena nodded, jotted it down even though she'd remember. "I'll get that drink for you." She was halfway to the door when he spoke again. "Elena." She stopped, turned. Adrian was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You don't have to lie to me." Her pulse kicked up. "I'm sorry?" "The lip. The scarf in August. The way you're standing like your ribs hurt." Her throat went dry. "I don't know what you—" "Yes, you do." For a moment, the air in the room felt too thin. Elena's mind raced, scrambling for a deflection, an exit, anything. But Adrian just sat there, calm and unflinching, like he had all the time in the world. "I'm fine," she said finally, quietly. "You're not." "With respect, Mr. Castell, that's not really your business." "Maybe not, but I'm making it my business." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended, and she regretted it immediately. But Adrian didn't flinch. If anything, he looked almost satisfied. "Because someone should," he said simply. Elena stared at him, heart hammering, every instinct screaming at her to leave, to get out of this room and away from this man who saw too much. But her feet didn't move. "I'll get your drink," she said again, and this time he let her go. Her hands were shaking when she reached the bar. "You good?" the bartender Jesse asked as he poured the Macallan. "Yeah, fine." "You don't look fine." "I'm fine." Jesse slid the glass across to her, gave her a look that said he didn't believe her but wasn't going to push. Elena carried the whiskey back to the private room on unsteady legs, her mind still caught on Adrian Castell's words. Because someone should. When she set the glass in front of him, he didn't thank her. He just picked it up, took a slow sip, and watched her like he was waiting for something. "Your steak will be up in about 20 minutes, Elena said. "Good." She turned to leave. "Sit down." She froze. "I'm sorry?" "Sit." It wasn't a request. But it wasn't cruel either. It was something else entirely, something that made her pulse spike and her instincts war between obedience and rebellion. "I'm working," she said carefully. "I'm your only table right now. Sit." Elena glanced toward the door. Marco was out in the main dining room. Nobody would see. And yet, Mr. Castell. Adrian. "I really can't." 5 minutes. He gestured to the chair across from him, and against every ounce of better judgment, Elena found herself sinking into it. Her whole body was tense, coiled like she might need to run. Adrian set his glass down and leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table. "How long?" "How long what?" "How long has he been hitting you?" The words landed like a punch. Elena's vision blurred at the edges, and for a second she thought she might actually pass out. But she didn't. She just sat there, hands clenched in her lap, staring at the table. Don't insult me," Adrian said, and his voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it now. "I've seen enough to know what I'm looking at, so I'll ask again. How long?" Elena's throat worked. She couldn't speak. "A year?" he pressed. "2? Why do you care?" The question came out broken, barely audible. Adrian was quiet for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "Because I don't like bullies. And I especially don't like men who put their hands on women." "You don't even know me." "No. But I know him. Or men like him." He tilted his head slightly. "What's his name?" "I'm not telling you that." "You will." "No, I won't." She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "I appreciate whatever this is, but I don't need saving. I'm handling it." Adrian didn't move. "Are you?" "Yes." "Then why are you still wearing his bruises?" Elena's breath hitched. She hated him in that moment. Hated him for seeing, for asking, for making her feel like the walls she'd built were made of glass. "I'll check on your steak," she said, and walked out before he could stop her. Well, she didn't go back to the private room for 15 minutes. When she finally did, the ribeye was waiting on the tray Jesse had prepped, perfect and steaming. She carried it in with her head high, determined to get through the rest of this shift without falling apart. Adrian was on his phone when she entered, but he ended the call the moment he saw her. "Here you go," Elena said, setting the plate down. "Medium rare. Can I get you anything else?" "No." "Great, enjoy." She was turning to leave when his hand moved. Not toward her, just a slight gesture, palm up, an offering. "I'm sorry," he said. Elena stopped. "For what?" "For pushing. That wasn't fair." She didn't know what to say to that. Men like Ryan didn't apologize. Men like Ryan justified, blamed, minimized. But Adrian just sat there, looking at her like he actually meant it. "It's fine," she said. "It's not. But I meant what I said." He picked up his fork, cut into the steak. "If you need help, you'll have it." I don't... You don't have to decide now. Just know the offer stands. Elena swallowed hard. Why? Adrian looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw something in his expression that wasn't confidence or control. It was something raw, closer to anger. Because no one helped when I needed it, he said quietly, and I'm done watching people suffer in silence. Before she could respond, he went back to his meal, effectively dismissing her, but the words hung in the air long after she left the room. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Adrian finished his dinner, declined dessert, and left a tip that made Elena's knees weak when she saw the receipt. $500 for one meal. Marco whistled when he saw it. I told you, guys loaded. Elena stared at the money, her mind spinning. It was more than she made in a week. Enough to replace the concealer. Enough to buy groceries without checking her account balance first. Enough to... You okay? Marco asked. She folded the receipt carefully and tucked it into her apron. Yeah, I'm good. But she wasn't good. She was terrified, because Adrian Castell had seen her, really seen her, and men who saw things, who noticed, who cared, were dangerous in ways she didn't know how to fight. She took the bus home in silence, clutching her bag against her chest like it might protect her from whatever came next. The apartment was dark when she arrived, and for one blissful moment she thought maybe Ryan was still out. Then she saw his shoes by the door. Her stomach dropped. You're late, he called from the living room. Elena locked the door behind her, set her bag down. Shift ran long. Uh-huh. He appeared in the doorway, beer in hand, eyes already glassy. The good mood from this morning was gone. She could tell by the set of his jaw, the way he was looking at her like she'd already done something wrong. How much did you make? He asked. Not much. Slow night. Liar. Her pulse spiked. Ryan, you think I'm stupid? He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed her wrist. How much? Ryan, you're hurting me. How? Much. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her mind flashed to Adrian's face, his voice. If you need help, you'll have it. But Adrian wasn't here. No one was here. $80, she lied. Ryan shoved her backward. She caught herself against the wall, heart hammering. You're lucky I keep you around, he said, turning away. Worthless as you are. Elena didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there until he disappeared into the bedroom and slammed the door. Then, slowly she sank to the floor and pressed her forehead against her knees. And for the first time in months, she let herself wonder. What if? The next morning, Elena woke to her phone buzzing. She fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. The text was short. This is Adrian. Marco gave me your number. Meet me for coffee. 10 a.m. Lose on 5th. Don't say no. Elena stared at the message, her chest tight. She should delete it. Block the number. Pretend last night never happened. But instead, she typed back. Okay. And just like that, everything changed. Lose on 5th was the kind of coffee shop that tried too hard. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling, a chalkboard menu written in aggressively cheerful cursive. Elena stood outside for 3 full minutes before she worked up the nerve to go in. She told Ryan she had a dentist appointment. He'd barely looked up from his phone. The bell above the door chimed when she entered, and she spotted Adrian immediately. He sat at a corner table facing the door like he'd been waiting for her to bolt. Maybe he had been. He stood when he saw her. You came. You didn't give me much choice. There's always a choice. He pulled out a chair for her. Coffee? I can get it myself. I know you can. Do you want me to get it anyway? Elena hesitated, then nodded. Black, no sugar. She watched him walk to the counter, trying to reconcile this version of him. Jeans, dark Henley, looking almost normal, with the man who'd sat alone in Aurelius's private dining room like he owned the world. Maybe he did own parts of it. She didn't know. Didn't want to know. He returned with 2 cups and slid one across to her before sitting down. Thank you, she said quietly. Adrian nodded, then got straight to it. How bad was it when you got home? Elena's hand tightened around her cup. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. The tip I left was substantial. I'm guessing your husband noticed. Her jaw clenched. How do you know I'm married? Wedding ring, tan line where you used to wear it more often. The way you flinched when I asked about the bruises. He took a sip of his coffee. Plus, I had someone look into it. The blood drained from Elena's face. You did what? I needed to know what I was dealing with. You had no right. You're right. I didn't. He set his cup down, met her eyes. But I did it anyway. Ryan Hale, sales manager at a pharmaceutical company, graduated from State College, married you 4 years ago. No criminal record, which tells me he's been careful. Or lucky. Elena's hands were shaking now. She set her coffee down before she spilled it. You can't just... Who the hell do you think you are? Someone who has resources you don't. I didn't ask for your help. No, but you need it. She laughed, sharp and bitter. You don't know anything about what I need. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Then tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you went home last night and he didn't lay a hand on you. Tell me you're safe. Elena opened her mouth, closed it. The lie wouldn't come. That's what I thought, Adrian said quietly. She looked away, blinking hard. The cafe felt too bright suddenly, too loud. A woman at the next table laughed at something on her phone. 2 college kids debated the merits of oat milk versus almond. Normal people living normal lives. Why do you care? Elena asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I told you last night. That's not a real answer. Adrian was quiet for a moment, turning his cup in slow circles on the table. My mother stayed with my father for 15 years. He never hit her where anyone could see. Controlled the money, controlled her friends, controlled everything. By the time she finally left, she was so broken she could barely function. He looked up at Elena. She died 2 years later. Heart attack, officially. But I know what really killed her. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, just let me help. I can't. Why not? Because I don't know you. Because this is insane. Because... She stopped, swallowed hard. Because what if you were worse than him? The words hung between them, ugly and honest. Adrian didn't flinch. That's fair. You don't know me. You don't know what I'm capable of. He paused. But you know what he's capable of. And you know it's going to get worse. You don't know that. Yes, I do. They always get worse. Elena's vision blurred. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to hold herself together. I don't have anywhere to go. No family. No money that isn't in a joint account he monitors. I've thought about leaving 1,000 times, but there's no point. He'd find me. Not if I make sure he can't. She looked up at him. What does that mean? It means I have resources, properties he doesn't know about, legal connections, security. Adrian's voice was steady, certain. It means if you decide to leave, I can make sure you disappear, properly. And what do you want in return? The question came out harder than she intended, laced with the cynicism of someone who'd learned that nothing came free. Adrian's expression didn't change. Nothing. Nobody does something like this for nothing. I do. Why? Because I can. Because someone should. Pick whichever answer makes you trust me more. Elena stared at him, searching for the angle, the trap, the inevitable demand that would come later. But all she saw was a man who looked at her like she was worth saving. It terrified her. I need to think about it, she said. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? That you're running out of time? That the next time might be the one that puts you in the hospital? Adrian's voice went quieter. You already know that. You don't need me to tell you. Elena stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. I have to go. Elena. She stopped but didn't turn around. You have my number. Use it. Anytime. For anything. She nodded once and walked out before the tears could fall. The next 3 days passed in a fog. Elena went to work, came home, moved through the apartment like a ghost. Ryan was in a good mood. He'd closed some big deal, which meant he was drinking but not angry. Yet. She knew better than to trust it. At night, she lay awake staring at her phone, at Adrian's contact information. She'd saved it under a different name, Laura, a coworker who didn't exist, but just knowing it was there felt dangerous. On the 4th day, Marco cornered her during her break. You've been weird. I'm always weird. Weirder than usual. He crossed his arms. This about that guy? Castell. Elena's stomach dropped. What about him? He's been asking about your schedule. What? Called twice. Wanted to know when you're working next. Marco studied her face. Should I be worried? No, it's nothing. Doesn't feel like nothing. Elena rubbed her temples. He's just a customer, a generous one. Uh-huh. And that's why you look like you're about to jump out of your skin every time someone mentions him? Marco, look, I don't know what's going on, and maybe I don't want to, but if this guy's bothering you, I can ban him. Say the word. Elena almost laughed. The idea of banning Adrian Castell from anywhere seemed absurd. He's not bothering me. Then what's he doing? I don't know. And that was the truth. She didn't know what Adrian was doing, what he wanted, what his endgame was. All she knew was that for the first time in years, someone had looked at her and seen past the carefully constructed lies. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like being flayed open. Adrian came back on Saturday night. Elena was refilling water glasses in section 2 when she saw him walk in. He didn't go to the hostess stand, didn't wait to be seated. He just walked straight to the bar and ordered a drink, like he had every right to be there. Her pulse kicked up. Table 6 needs their entrees, Jessie called from the kitchen. Elena forced herself to focus. She delivered the food, checked on her other tables, pretended she couldn't feel Adrian's eyes on her from across the room. But when she finally had a free moment, she found herself walking toward the bar almost against her will. You're not in the private room tonight, she said. Adrian glanced up from his whiskey. Didn't feel like being alone. Liar. His mouth quirked. Maybe. Can you take a break? I'm working. I know. I'm asking anyway. Elena looked around. The restaurant was busy, but not slammed. Marco was in the office. She technically could take 15 minutes. Why? She asked. Because I want to talk to you, and I'm guessing you don't want to do it here. He was right. She didn't. 10 minutes, she said. They ended up in the alley behind the restaurant, where the kitchen staff smoked and the dumpsters reeked of old food. Romantic. Elena leaned against the brick wall, arms crossed. Well? Adrian stayed a few feet away, hands in his pockets. Have you thought about what I said? That's all you wanted to ask? Yes? You came all the way here for that? Yes. Elena shook her head. You're persistent. I prefer determined. Most stalkers do. I'm not stalking you. You had someone investigate my husband. You got my number from my boss. You keep showing up at my work. She raised an eyebrow. What would you call it? Insurance. Against what? Adrian's expression darkened. Against the inevitable. A chill ran down her spine. What does that mean? It means men like Ryan don't stop. They escalate. And I'd rather be ready when it happens than show up too late. Elena's breath caught. You think he's going to... I think he's going to hurt you worse than he already has. Yeah. The words sat between them, heavy and horrible. You don't know him, Elena said, but her voice wavered. I know the type. That's enough. She wanted to argue, to defend Ryan the way she'd trained herself to do for years, but the lie wouldn't come anymore. Because Adrian was right. Deep down, in the place she didn't let herself look, she knew he was right. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Of him or me? Both. Adrian nodded slowly. Fair, but I'll make you a deal. You don't have to trust me completely. You just have to trust me more than you trust him. Elena looked at him, really looked, at the sharp lines of his face, the intensity in his eyes, the stillness in the way he stood, like he was always ready for something. He was dangerous. She knew that instinctively, but there was a difference between dangerous and cruel. Ryan was both. Adrian might only be one. What would it look like? She asked. If I said yes? You'd pack a bag, bare minimum. I'd pick you up somewhere he wouldn't expect. From there you'd stay at a property I own, completely separate from anything tied to my name. We'd file a restraining order, start divorce proceedings, make sure every legal avenue is covered. And if he comes looking, he won't find you. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. The certainty in his voice should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a fact. Elena pressed her palms against the wall behind her, the brick rough against her skin. I need more time. How much? I don't know. Adrian stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and expensive. I'll give you time. But Elena, if he hurts you again, I'm not waiting for permission. Understand? She should have been angry, should have told him he had no right to make decisions for her. But all she felt was a strange, disorienting sense of safety. Understand, she whispered. Adrian held her gaze for another moment, then nodded and stepped back. Go finish your shift. I'll be here when you're done. You don't have to. I know. He walked back inside, leaving Elena alone in the alley with her racing thoughts and the smell of rotting garbage. She gave herself 30 seconds to fall apart. Then she straightened her apron, fixed her expression, and went back to work. So, Ryan was waiting when she got home. She knew the moment she opened the door. The lights were all on. His jacket was thrown over the couch, and there was a tension in the air that made her skin prickle. You're late again, he said from the kitchen. Saturday nights run long. You know that. He appeared in the doorway, beer in hand. Who's the guy? Her blood went cold. What? Don't play dumb. Marco called looking for you earlier, said some man's been asking about you. Damn it. Damn Marco and his big mouth. A customer, Elena said carefully. He's just a regular, tips well. How well? Does it matter? Ryan crossed the room fast. She didn't have time to move before he grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Don't get smart with me. Ryan, you're hurting. Is he why you've been acting weird? You fucking him? No, I barely know him. Liar. He shoved her backward. She stumbled, caught herself on the arm of the couch. Her pulse roared in her ears. I'm not lying, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He's just a customer, that's all. Ryan stared at her, eyes glassy with alcohol and something meaner. Then he laughed. You think someone like that wants you? Look at yourself. You're pathetic. Elena didn't respond. Responding only made it worse. Get out of my sight, Ryan said, turning away. You make me sick. She didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed her bag and locked herself in the bathroom, heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. Her phone was in her hand before she'd made a conscious decision. She pulled up Adrian's number, thumb hovering over the call button. She shouldn't. This was her mess, her life, her... The phone rang. She stared at the screen confused until she realized she'd hit the button by accident. Elena. Adrian's voice was steady, immediate, like he'd been waiting. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean to call. Are you safe? I'm in the bathroom. He's in the living room. Did he hurt you? Not really, just grabbed my arm. He's drunk. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to come get you? Yes. The word was right there, desperate and terrified. No, she said instead. Not yet. I needed to hear someone's voice. Okay, I'm here. She pressed her back against the door, sliding down to sit on the floor. Tell me something. Anything. I don't care what. Adrian didn't hesitate. When I was 8, my father locked me in the basement for 2 days because I broke a window playing baseball. No food, no light. My mother wasn't allowed to let me out. His voice was calm, factual. When he finally opened the door, he didn't apologize. Just told me that's what happened when you disobeyed. Elena's chest tightened. Adrian, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you know I understand. The fear, the helplessness, the way you start making yourself smaller just to survive. He paused. And I'm telling you it doesn't have to be forever. Tears slipped down her cheeks. What if I can't do it? What if I'm too weak? You're not weak. You're surviving. There's a difference. I'm so tired. I know. They sat in silence for a while, Elena on her bathroom floor and Adrian on the other end of the line. She could hear him breathing, steady and sure, and it anchored her. I'm going to do it, she said finally. Do what? Leave. I don't know when, but I'm going to do it. Okay? That's it? Just okay? What else do you want me to say? I don't know. Maybe try to convince me? Tell me it's the right choice? You already know it's the right choice. You don't need me to convince you. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You're strange, you know that? I've been called worse. She almost smiled, almost. I should go, she said. Before he notices I've been in here too long. Call me if anything changes. I will. Elena. Yeah? Lock the door tonight. She swallowed hard. Okay. After she hung up, she sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at the phone in her hand. Then she stood, washed her face, and opened the door. Ryan had passed out on the couch, beer bottle tipped over on the floor beside him. Elena stepped over it, grabbed a blanket from the closet, and locked herself in the bedroom. For the first time in months, she slept through the night. The next week blurred together. Elena worked her shifts, avoided Ryan as much as possible, and exchanged sporadic texts with Adrian. Nothing heavy, just check-ins. How are you? I'm fine. Are you working tonight? Yes. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to jump. On Thursday, Ryan came home early. Elena was folding laundry in the bedroom when she heard the front door slam. Her stomach dropped. He wasn't supposed to be back until 8. Elena! His voice was sharp, angry. She set down the shirt she'd been folding and walked out slowly. What's wrong? Ryan stood in the middle of the living room, phone in hand, face red. I got fired. Oh no. What happened? She asked carefully. Some bullshit about missing quotas. They've had it out for me for months. He threw his phone at the couch. Bastards. Elena's mind raced. Ryan fired meant Ryan home all day. Ryan drunk more often. Ryan with nothing to lose. I'm sorry, she said. Sorry doesn't pay the bills. I know, I'll pick up extra shifts. You? He laughed, ugly and sharp. You think your shitty waitress job is going to cover this? We're going to lose the apartment. Everything. We'll figure it out. We. He stepped closer. There is no we. There's me cleaning up your messes and you dragging me down. Elena backed up. Ryan, shut up. She saw it coming but didn't move fast enough. His hand connected with her cheek, snapping her head to the side. Pain exploded across her face. She stumbled, caught herself on the wall. Ryan, please. He hit her again. This time her knees buckled. She went down hard, the carpet rough against her palms. You're useless, Ryan spat. Absolutely useless. He walked away. Bedroom door slammed. Elena stayed on the floor, ears ringing, tasting blood. Her phone was in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands and typed a single word to Adrian. Now. The response came in seconds. Where? Corner of 8th and Madison. 20 minutes. I'll be there. Elena pushed herself up, stumbled to the bathroom, grabbed the bag she'd packed 3 days ago and hidden behind the towels. She didn't look in the mirror, didn't check the damage, just walked out the front door while Ryan's music blared from the bedroom. The air outside was cold. She started walking. Behind her, the apartment door stayed closed. Ahead of her, everything was uncertain and terrifying, and maybe, just maybe, better. She kept walking. The black car pulled up exactly 17 minutes later. Elena stood on the corner, clutching her bag, trying not to look like someone running for her life. A couple walked past with a dog. A teenager on a skateboard weaved around her. Normal Thursday night, normal city sounds. Everything normal except the metallic taste of blood still in her mouth and the way her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The passenger window rolled down. Get in, Adrian said. She didn't hesitate. The door closed behind her with a solid thunk that felt like sealing a tomb. Or opening one. She wasn't sure which. Adrian pulled into traffic without a word, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the mirrors more than the road ahead. Elena pressed herself into the seat and stared straight forward. They drove for 10 minutes in silence before he spoke. Let me see. It's fine. Elena. She turned her head toward him. His eyes flicked to her face for half a second before returning to the road. But that was enough. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. It's not that bad, she said. Don't. His voice was clipped. Don't minimize it. She looked away. Out the window, the city streamed past. Streetlights, late-night diners, a group of people laughing outside a bar. People who weren't running. People who got to just exist. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. Elena's chest tightened. I need to know where you're taking me. Adrian glanced at her, something softening in his expression. A building I own in the financial district. Top floor. Private entrance. No doorman, no cameras in the elevator lobby. Completely off the books. He paused. No one will find you there, I promise. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this wasn't just trading one cage for another. What if Ryan goes to the police, she asked. Reports me missing? Let him. You're an adult. You can leave whenever you want. He'll say I stole something, or, I don't know, make up some story. Then we'll deal with it. We. Yes, we. The word sat between them, foreign and dangerous. Elena had spent 4 years learning that we meant Ryan decides and Elena obeys. The idea that it could mean something else felt like a language she didn't speak. They pulled into an underground garage, dark and nearly empty. Adrian parked in a spot marked reserved and killed the engine. Come on. She followed him to an elevator that required a keycard to activate. The ride-up was silent, just the hum of machinery and Elena's pulse hammering in her ears. When the doors opened, they revealed a narrow hallway with a single door at the end. Adrian unlocked it and stepped aside. After you. The apartment was nothing like she'd expected. Not lavish or cold or designed to impress. Just space. Clean lines, comfortable furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It felt lived in without being cluttered, like someone had actually thought about what it would be like to exist here. Kitchen's fully stocked, Adrian said, setting his keys on the counter. Bathroom's through there, bedroom's yours. I'll take the couch. Elena blinked. You're staying? For tonight, yeah. I don't need a babysitter. I know, but I'm staying anyway. He pulled out his phone. I'm going to make some calls, get the legal process started. You should clean up, eat something if you can. She stood in the middle of the room feeling unmoored, like gravity had shifted and she didn't know which way was down anymore. Adrian? He looked up. Thank you. His expression softened just slightly. Don't thank me yet. Well, the bathroom was pristine, all white tile and chrome fixtures. Elena locked the door and finally looked in the mirror. The damage was worse than she'd thought. Her left cheek was already swelling, a deep red that would be purple by morning. Her lip was split in the corner. There was a bruise forming along her jaw. She turned on the shower as hot as it would go and stripped off her clothes, leaving them in a pile on the floor. Under the water, she let herself fall apart. Just for a few minutes. Just enough to get it out of her system. By the time she stepped out, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything she'd owned in years, she felt scraped hollow, but functional. There were clothes folded on the counter that hadn't been there before. Sweatpants, a t-shirt, both brand new, with tags still attached. She dressed and found Adrian in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what time it is, Davis. I need the paperwork started tonight. Pause. Restraining order, divorce filing, asset freeze if possible. Another pause. Because I'm asking. That's why. He ended the call and looked at Elena. Lawyer. He's good. Expensive, but good. I can't afford expensive. You're not paying. Adrian, we're not arguing about this. Sit down. I made tea. She almost laughed. This man who'd had someone investigate her husband, who spoke about legal maneuvers like ordering dinner, had made her tea. She sat. The mug he slid across the counter was warm in her hands. Earl Grey, judging by the smell. She took a sip, and it was perfect. Not too hot, not too weak. You don't seem like a tea person, she said. I'm not, but you look like you could use something that isn't coffee at 11 at night. Elena studied him over the rim of her mug. Who are you, really? What do you mean? I mean, you have lawyers on speed dial. You own property that's completely off the books, and you operate like someone who's used to people doing what you say. She set the mug down. So who are you? Adrian leaned against the counter, arms crossed. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he sighed. I run a security consulting firm, mostly corporate clients, some private individuals. We handle risk assessment, threat mitigation, personal protection. He met her eyes. The legal side of things, mostly. But I have contacts in places that aren't always legal. Like the mob? Like people who know people. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. He pushed off the counter. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things I'm not proud of. But I have lines I don't cross, and one of them is hurting people who don't deserve it. And who decides who deserves it? I do. The honesty of it was almost refreshing. No pretense, no justification, just fact. "What are you going to do to Ryan?" she asked quietly. Adrian's expression went carefully neutral. "What do you want me to do to him?" "I don't know. I want him to leave me alone. I want him to never touch another woman the way he touched me. I want—" Her voice cracked. "I want him to understand what he did, to feel even a fraction of what he made me feel. That's not an unreasonable thing to want. But revenge and justice aren't the same thing, and you need to decide which one you can live with." Elena stared into her tea. "If I say I want him hurt, does that make me as bad as him?" "No, it makes you human." "What if I say I want worse than hurt?" Adrian didn't flinch. "Then I'd ask if you're sure, and if you said yes, I'd handle it." The casual way he said it sent a chill down her spine. "Just like that? Just like that? You'd do that for me? Someone you barely know?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I can. Because you deserve someone on your side for once." He paused. "And because seeing men like Ryan walk away unpunished makes me want to burn the world down." Elena believed him. That was the terrifying part. She absolutely believed he would do it if she asked. "I want him gone," she said finally. "I want him scared. I want him to know that if he comes near me again, there will be consequences he can't charm or lie his way out of." She looked up at Adrian. "But I don't want him dead. I don't want that on my conscience." Adrian nodded slowly. "Okay. That's it?" "That's it. I'll make sure he understands the new rules. He'll leave you alone." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm very good at making people understand things." The way he said it left no room for doubt. On. Elena woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of pure panic before she remembered where she was. Safe. She was safe. The apartment was quiet. She found Adrian in the kitchen, dressed in a suit, coffee in hand, looking like he'd been up for hours. "Morning," he said. "There's breakfast if you want it." She glanced at the counter where bagels, cream cheese, and fruit sat arranged on a plate. "You didn't have to do that. I was up anyway. Eat." She did because arguing felt exhausting and the bagel was still warm. Adrian worked on his laptop, occasionally typing or taking calls that he kept brief and cryptic. "Davis is filing the restraining order today," he said between calls. "Should be processed by Monday. The divorce paperwork will take longer, but we're starting the clock." "What do I need to do?" "Nothing yet. Just stay here. Don't contact Ryan. Don't go to the apartment. Don't tell anyone where you are except people you absolutely trust." "I don't have people I absolutely trust." Adrian looked up at her. "You have me." It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a promise. "What about work?" Elena asked. "Marco will notice if I don't show up." "Already handled. I called him this morning. Told him you had a family emergency and would be out for a week." She frowned. "You can't just make decisions for me." "You're right. I'm sorry. But it needed to be done, and I figured you had enough to worry about." He closed his laptop. "If you want to call him yourself and tell him the truth, go ahead, but I'd recommend keeping the details vague for now." Elena sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted even though she'd just woken up. "This is really happening." "Yeah. I left him. I actually left him." "You did. What if I regret it?" Adrian moved to sit across from her, forearms resting on his knees. "Then you deal with that when it comes." "But Elena, I've seen a lot of people in bad situations, and regret usually comes from not leaving sooner, not from leaving at all." She wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that the knot of guilt and fear in her stomach would eventually loosen. "He's going to be so angry," she whispered. "I know. He'll try to find me. He won't succeed." "You keep saying that like it's a guarantee." Adrian's eyes hardened. "It is." The weekend passed in a strange, suspended kind of existence. Elena stayed in the apartment, watching the city from the windows, trying to adjust to the silence. No walking on eggshells, no monitoring Ryan's moods, no calculating how to make herself smaller, just quiet. It should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt like waiting for a bomb to go off. Adrian came and went, bringing food, checking in, making calls. He slept on the couch, even though Elena told him he didn't have to stay. He stayed anyway. On Sunday evening, his phone rang and his expression went dark. "What?" Elena asked when he hung up. Ryan filed a missing persons report. Her stomach dropped. "Can he do that?" "He can. It's pointless, but he can." Adrian scrolled through his phone. "Police called your work. Marco told them you contacted him about a family emergency. That should be enough to get them to drop it." "But what if—" "Elena, breathe. This is exactly what we expected. Ryan's scrambling, trying to maintain control. It won't work." "How do you know?" "Because I'm already 3 steps ahead of him." She wanted to ask what that meant, but part of her didn't want to know. That night, she lay awake in the bedroom. Her bedroom, Adrian kept insisting, and stared at the ceiling. Her phone was on the nightstand, turned off per Adrian's instructions. No contact, no slip-ups. But she could still imagine it ringing, could still imagine Ryan's voice on the other end, smooth and apologetic, and full of promises he'd never keep. "Come home, baby. I'm sorry. It'll be different this time. It was never different." Wilson. Monday morning, Adrian's lawyer arrived. Davis was a thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and the demeanor of someone who'd seen every awful thing people could do to each other and had stopped being surprised. "Ms. Voss," he said, shaking her hand, "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." They sat at the dining table, Davis pulling out paperwork that Elena signed until her hand cramped. Restraining order. Divorce filing. Affidavit detailing the abuse. "Do I have to see him?" she asked. "In court?" "For the restraining order hearing, yes, but it's brief and you'll have representation. For the divorce, we can potentially handle most of it without you present, depending on whether he contests." "He'll contest. He won't make this easy." "They rarely do." Davis straightened his papers. "But Mr. Castell has asked me to make this as airtight as possible. We will." After Davis left, Elena felt scraped raw. Adrian found her standing at the windows, arms wrapped around herself. "You okay?" "Not really." "Fair." He stood next to her, not touching, just present. They watched the city move below, cars and people and lives being lived. "What happens now?" Elena asked. "Now we wait for the hearing. Ryan will be served with the restraining order papers tomorrow. After that, he's legally required to stay away from you." "And if he doesn't?" "Then he goes to jail." "You really think a piece of paper will stop him?" Adrian turned to face her. "No, but it gives us legal recourse, and in the meantime, I'll make sure he understands on a more personal level." There it was again, that quiet threat wrapped in protection. "When?" she asked. "Tonight." Her pulse jumped. "What are you going to do?" "Have a conversation." "Adrian, I'm not going to kill him, if that's what you're worried about. Just make sure we're clear on the new arrangement." He reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Trust me." She did. That was the terrifying part. Adrian left at 9. Elena tried to watch TV, tried to read, tried to do anything other than imagine what was happening across the city in her old apartment. But her mind wouldn't settle. At 11:30, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "It's done. Be home soon." She stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. A dozen questions fought for space. "Are you okay?" The response came immediately. "Yes, he's alive. And he's scared." Elena set the phone down with shaking hands. When Adrian returned just after midnight, there was blood on his knuckles. He saw her looking and went straight to the kitchen sink, running water over his hands. "It's not mine." "Adrian, he's fine. Couple bruises, nothing broken, but he knows now." He dried his hands on a towel, wincing slightly. "He knows that touching you again means answering to me, and he knows I don't bluff." Elena's throat was tight. "What did you say to him?" "The truth, that you're under my protection. That if he comes near you, calls you, contacts you in any way, I'll make sure he regrets it." Adrian leaned against the counter. "And I showed him what regret looks like." "You beat him up." "I made a point. That's not—" She stopped, because what was she going to say? That violence was wrong? She'd been living with violence for years. At least this time it wasn't directed at her. Are you angry? Adrian asked quietly. I don't know what I am. He nodded. That's fair. Elena moved closer, studying his hands. The knuckles were split, already bruising. Without thinking, she reached out and touched one gently. Adrian went very still. Does it hurt? She asked. Not really. Liar. His mouth quirked. Maybe a little. She should have been horrified, should have been disgusted that he'd used those hands to hurt someone, even someone who deserved it. But all she felt was a strange, twisting gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. Adrian's expression softened. You don't have to thank me for that. Yes, I do, because you did what I couldn't. You could have. You just shouldn't have had to. They stood there in the kitchen, her hand still resting on his, the city humming through the windows behind them. For the first time in 4 years, Elena felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to survive this. Monk. The restraining order hearing was set for Thursday. Elena spent the week in a fog of anxiety, barely eating, barely sleeping. Adrian tried to keep her distracted, made her watch movies, brought her books, even taught her how to play poker one night with remarkably little success. You're terrible at bluffing, he said after she lost for the 5th time. I know. I've spent 4 years pretending everything's fine. You'd think I'd be better at it. That's different. That's survival. This is a game. Is it, though? Isn't everything just survival dressed up as something else? Adrian studied her across the table, cards forgotten. Maybe. But you're not just surviving anymore. Wednesday night, she couldn't sleep. She found Adrian on the couch, laptop open, clearly working despite the late hour. Can't sleep either? She asked. He closed the computer. Not really. She sat down next to him, pulling her knees to her chest. Tell me something true. Oh, like what? Anything. I'm tired of living inside my own head. Adrian was quiet for a moment. After my mother died, I spent 2 years trying to find my father. Not to reconnect, to make him pay. He stared at nothing. I had plans, detailed ones, how I'd make him suffer the way she did. Did you? No. He died of liver failure before I got the chance. Drank himself to death in a motel room in Nevada. He glanced at her. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I just felt cheated. Lena reached out and took his hand. He didn't pull away. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. It made me who I am. Is that a good thing? I don't know. You tell me. She looked at their joined hands, his scarred knuckles against her smaller fingers. I think you're someone who sees broken things and doesn't look away. And I think that's rarer than it should be. Adrian's grip tightened just slightly. You're not broken. Yes, I am, but maybe that's okay. Maybe broken things can still work. They sat like that for a while, not talking, just existing in the same space. Eventually, Elena's eyes grew heavy. Go to bed, Adrian said softly. Tomorrow's going to be long. Will you be there, at the hearing? I can't go in with you, but I'll be right outside. Promise? Promise. She squeezed his hand once and stood. At the bedroom door, she paused. Adrian? I'm glad you found me. He smiled, small and genuine. Me too. The courthouse was uglier than Elena expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, people moving through with the exhausted shuffle of those who'd seen too much bureaucracy. Adrian had driven her, sat with her in the parking lot until the last possible moment. You're going to be fine, he said. What if I'm not? Then you fake it, and afterward, I'll take you anywhere you want. Ice cream, terrible action movie, whatever you need. She almost smiled. You're a strange man. I'll take that as a compliment. Davis met her inside, walking her through security and up to the second floor where family court convened. Ryan was already there, sitting with a lawyer who looked expensive and bored. He saw her immediately. The look he gave her was pure rage wrapped in a thin veneer of hurt, like she was the one who'd betrayed him, like she was the villain in this story. Elena's hand started shaking. Don't look at him, Davis murmured. Eyes forward? The hearing lasted 20 minutes. Ryan's lawyer argued that the restraining order was unnecessary, that this was a domestic dispute blown out of proportion, that his client had never been violent. Davis produced photographs. Medical records Elena had gotten 2 years ago after a particularly bad night. Her testimony, delivered in a voice that shook but didn't break. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd clearly heard versions of this story 1,000 times. She listened, expression unreadable, then delivered her ruling. Restraining order granted. Mr. Hale is to maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from Ms. Voss at all times. No contact directly or through third parties. Violation will result in immediate arrest. She banged her gavel. Next case. Simple as that. Elena walked out on numb legs, Davis talking at her about next steps and divorce proceedings. But she wasn't really hearing him. Ryan was somewhere behind her, probably arguing with his lawyer, probably planning his next move. But right now she didn't care, because Adrian was waiting outside, leaning against the wall, and when he saw her, he straightened immediately. Well? Granted. Something fierce crossed his face. Pride, maybe, or satisfaction. Good. They didn't speak on the drive back. Elena stared out the window, watching the world blur past, feeling scraped hollow, but somehow lighter. At the apartment, Adrian disappeared into the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of whiskey. I don't usually drink, Elena said. Today you do. She took the glass. They clinked them together without ceremony and drank. It burned going down, but the warmth that spread through her chest felt earned. What now? She asked. Now you start figuring out what your life looks like. Without him. Without fear. Adrian set his glass down. Now you get to choose. Elena looked at him, this complicated, dangerous man who'd inserted himself into her life and refused to let her drown. What if I don't know how to choose anymore? Then you learn, and I'll be here while you do. Why? Because someone should be. It was the same answer he'd given that first night at the restaurant, but this time Elena believed it. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The days after the hearing felt like learning to breathe in a different atmosphere. Elena woke up each morning without the knot of dread in her stomach and didn't know what to do with the absence. She'd spent so long bracing for impact that existing without constant threat felt wrong somehow, like she was forgetting something important. Adrian noticed. He always noticed. You're doing it again, he said one morning over coffee. Doing what? Waiting for the other shoe to drop. Elena wrapped her hands around her mug. Maybe because it always does. Not this time. You can't know that. Watch me. He said it with such certainty that she almost believed him. Almost. The divorce paperwork moved forward with the grinding slowness of legal machinery. Davis called every few days with updates. Ryan's lawyer was pushing back on asset division, claiming Elena had contributed nothing to their finances. It was a lie, but proving otherwise meant digging through 4 years of joint accounts and receipts Elena didn't have access to anymore. We'll get there, Davis assured her. These things take time. Time. Elena had plenty of it now. Too much, maybe. She'd been staying in Adrian's apartment for 2 weeks when the restlessness started. The space was beautiful, the view was stunning, but it was still a cage. A gilded one, sure, but she could feel the walls closing in. I need to do something, she told Adrian one evening. He was working at the dining table, shirt sleeves rolled up, glasses she'd never seen him wear before perched on his nose. He looked up. Like what? I don't know. Something. Anything. I can't just sit here forever. You're healing. I'm going stir-crazy. Adrian closed his laptop. What do you want to do? I want to go back to work. Elena, I know what you're going to say. That it's too risky, that Ryan might show up, but I can't just hide forever. She stood, pacing to the windows and back. I need to feel like a person again. Not just someone's victim or someone's responsibility. You're not my responsibility. Then what am I? The question hung between them, sharp and uncomfortable. Adrian removed his glasses, set them carefully on the table. You're someone I care about, someone I want to keep safe. I can't be safe and alive at the same time. Not the way I need to be. He studied her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Okay. Okay? You want to go back to work, we'll make it work, but not alone, and not without precautions. Elena's chest loosened. What kind of precautions? The kind that involved me making a few calls. Give me 2 days. She didn't ask what that meant. She was learning that with Adrian, some questions were better left unasked. The calls turned into a man named Marcus. He showed up at the apartment on Saturday morning, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of stillness that suggested he'd been military at some point. Maybe still was, in ways that didn't show up on paper. "Ms. Voss," he said, extending a hand, "I'll be your security detail." Elena looked at Adrian. "You hired me a bodyguard?" "I hired you peace of mind. Marcus is just the delivery method." Marcus's mouth twitched like he was fighting a smile. "I'll be discreet. You won't even know I'm there most of the time." "Most of the time?" "When I need to be visible, I will be. When I don't, I won't." He glanced at Adrian. "Standard protocol." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say this was excessive, that she didn't need a shadow. But the truth was, the idea of going back to Aurelius without some kind of backup made her stomach turn. "Okay," she said finally, "but you have to promise not to hover." "I don't hover. I maintain a tactical perimeter." "That sounds like hovering with extra words." This time Marcus did smile. "You'll get used to it." Marco nearly dropped his clipboard when Elena walked through the employee entrance on Monday evening. "Jesus Christ, where have you been?" "Family emergency, I told you." "For 3 weeks?" He looked her up and down, taking in the faded bruises, the new tension in her shoulders. "You look like hell." "Thanks. You really know how to make a girl feel welcome." Marco softened slightly. "I'm glad you're okay. We missed you around here. Tips have been shit without you charming the high rollers." Elena smiled despite herself. "I missed it too." She hadn't realized how true that was until she tied on her apron and stepped into the dining room. The familiar rhythm of it, menus, water, wine recommendations, felt like slipping into an old coat, worn and comfortable, and hers. Marcus sat at the bar nursing a club soda, looking like any other customer except for the way his eyes tracked every person who came near her section. Elena tried not to think about it. The night passed smoothly until the dinner rush hit, and she turned to greet a new table and froze. Ryan's brother sat in Section 3. Kyle Hale. Younger, smoother, with the same smile that had once made her trust Ryan. He looked up when she approached, and his expression was all false concern. "Elena. Wow. Didn't expect to see you here." Her pulse kicked up. "Kyle. How have you been? Ryan's been worried sick." "I'm sure he has. He wants to talk. Work things out." Elena glanced toward the bar. Marcus was already moving, casual but purposeful, positioning himself near her section. "I have nothing to say to Ryan," she said evenly, "and he's legally required to stay away from me." "Come on, Elena, you know how he gets. He didn't mean, 'What can I get you to drink?'" She cut him off, voice professional, offering no ground. Kyle's smile thinned. "I'll have a beer, whatever's on tap." She took his order and walked away before he could say anything else. Her hands were shaking when she reached the service station. Marco appeared at her elbow. "You good?" "Yeah, just old acquaintance." "The kind of acquaintance who makes you look like you've seen a ghost?" Elena didn't answer. She put in Kyle's order and worked the rest of her tables on autopilot, hyper-aware of him sitting there, watching her. When she brought his food, he tried again. "He's not doing well, you know. Lost his job, lost you. He's falling apart." "That's not my problem. He loves you." "No, he doesn't. He just hates that I left." Kyle's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, whatever story you told the judge. We both know you're exaggerating. Ryan's a good guy who made some mistakes. Everyone does." Elena set his plate down with more force than necessary. "I'm done with this conversation. Enjoy your meal." She was turning to leave when Kyle grabbed her wrist. It was barely a touch, just his fingers wrapping around her arm, but the contact sent panic flooding through her system. She jerked back, and in that same moment, Marcus was there. "Remove your hand." Kyle looked up, startled. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone you don't want to test." Marcus's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "Let go, now." Kyle released her immediately, hands up. "Jesus, we were just talking." "No, you were touching her without permission. Don't do it again." Other diners were starting to notice. Elena's face burned with embarrassment and something closer to fear. "It's fine," she said quickly. "Marcus, it's fine." "It's not." But he stepped back slightly, giving her space while keeping himself between her and Kyle. Kyle threw some cash on the table and stood. Tell Ryan I tried. He looked at Elena. This isn't over. Yeah, it is, Marcus said quietly. And if you or Ryan come near her again, you'll wish it had ended differently. Kyle left without another word. Elena stood there, blood roaring in her ears, trying to remember how to breathe normally. Around her, the restaurant slowly returned to its usual noise level, the moment passing into the background like it had never happened. Marco appeared. What the hell was that? Nothing, just a misunderstanding. That didn't look like nothing. I'm fine, Marco. Really. He didn't believe her, but he also didn't push. Take 5, get some air. She nodded and escaped to the alley, the same spot where she'd stood with Adrian weeks ago. The night air was cold against her face, sharp and clarifying. Marcus followed her out, but stayed near the door, giving her space. I'm sorry, she said without turning around. I overreacted. No, you didn't. He put his hands on you. Barely. Doesn't matter. You get to decide what's too much. Not him. Elena leaned against the wall, pressing her palms against the brick. Ryan sent him. To get in my head. Probably. It worked. Only if you let it. She looked at Marcus, the stranger Adrian had assigned to protect her, who just defended her without hesitation. Thank you for stepping in. That's the job. Still. Thank you. He nodded once. You want to go home? I can call Adrian. No, I want to finish my shift. She straightened, pushing off the wall. I'm not letting them chase me out of here. Marcus almost smiled. Good. Adrian was waiting when she got back to the apartment. He took one look at her face and his expression went dark. What happened? Ryan's brother showed up at the restaurant. Did he touch you? Marcus handled it. That's not what I asked. Elena sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. He grabbed my wrist for like 2 seconds. Marcus made him leave. Adrian's jaw tightened. I'm going to kill him. Which one? Both of them. Adrian, I'm serious. This is harassment. Violation of the restraining order by proxy. We don't know Ryan sent him. Yes, we do. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling Davis. This needs to be documented. It was just a conversation that got out of hand. Adrian stopped, turning to face her fully. Why are you defending them? I'm not. I'm just... She broke off, frustrated. I'm tired. I'm tired of everything being a crisis. I just want to exist without constantly looking over my shoulder. Then let me handle this. Let me make sure they understand the consequences. Like you handled it with Ryan? The words came out sharper than she intended. Adrian's expression shuddered. You have a problem with how I handled Ryan? I don't know, do I? Elena stood, pacing. You beat him up, you threatened him, and now his brother shows up at my work. What if you made it worse? I made it clear. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like violence just breeds more violence. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. What do you want me to do, Elena? What would make you feel safe? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll never feel safe again. That's not true. How do you know? You've never been where I am. No, but I've been adjacent to it, and I've seen what happens when people don't fight back. He moved closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. You have every right to be angry. At Ryan, at Kyle, at the whole situation. But don't be angry at me for trying to protect you. I'm not angry at you. Yes, you are. Elena's throat tightened. Maybe a little. Because this is easier for you. You get to be the hero. I'm just the broken thing you're fixing. Is that really what you think? I don't know what to think anymore. Adrian reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You're not broken, and I'm not a hero. We're just two people trying to navigate a bad situation. That's a very diplomatic answer. I'm trying not to screw this up. This? He hesitated, then dropped his hand. You. Us. Whatever this is. The air between them shifted, charged with something Elena wasn't ready to name. I should get some sleep, she said quietly. Adrian nodded, stepping back. Yeah. Long day. She went to the bedroom and closed the door, then leaned against it and tried to sort through the tangle of feelings in her chest. Anger, fear, gratitude, and underneath it all, something newer and more dangerous. She was starting to care about Adrian Castell, not just as her protector or her savior, but as a person. A complicated, damaged person who'd inserted himself into her life and somehow made it feel less empty. That terrified her more than Ryan ever had. The next morning, Dave is called with news. We've got a court date for the divorce hearing, 6 weeks. Elena sat at the dining table, phone on speaker, while Adrian made breakfast. That fast? Ryan's pushing to expedite, probably thinks he can intimidate you into settling. Davis's tone was dry. He's wrong. What do I need to do? Show up. Tell the truth. Let me handle the rest. After the call ended, Adrian set a plate in front of her. Eggs, toast, bacon. She hadn't asked for it, but he kept feeding her anyway. You don't have to cook for me every day, she said. I know. Then why do you? Because you forget to eat when you're stressed. It was true, but hearing him say it made her chest tight. You notice a lot about me. Yeah. Why? Adrian sat down across from her. Because you're worth noticing. Elena looked down at her plate, not trusting herself to meet his eyes. Adrian, I need to ask you something. Okay. Well, what happens after the divorce is finalized? After Ryan's out of my life for good? What do you mean? I mean, she forced herself to look up. Do I keep living here? Do I move out? Do we just go back to our separate lives like none of this happened? Adrian's expression was unreadable. Is that what you want? I'm asking what you want. I want you to have choices, real ones, not ones dictated by fear or necessity. That's not an answer. No, it's not. He leaned back in his chair. You want the truth? I don't know what happens next. This wasn't supposed to be complicated. I was supposed to help you get out, make sure you were safe, and that would be it. Clean, simple. But nothing about this has been simple, and He stopped, jaw working. I don't want you to leave. The admission hung in the air between them. I don't want to leave, Elena said quietly. But I need to make sure I'm staying for the right reasons. Not because I'm scared to be alone, not because you saved me and I feel obligated, not because you're confusing gratitude with something else. Yeah. Adrian nodded slowly. That's fair and smart. You should be sure. Are you sure? About what? About wanting me here. About whatever this is turning into. He met her eyes, steady and certain. I've never been more sure of anything. Elena's breath caught. Adrian. But that doesn't matter. What matters is what you want. So take your time. Figure it out. I'm not going anywhere. She wanted to reach across the table, wanted to close the distance between them, wanted to stop thinking and just feel for once. But she'd spent too long making decisions based on impulse and emotion. This time, she needed to be smart. Okay, she said. Okay. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, and Elena tried not to think about the fact that comfortable silence with Adrian felt more intimate than anything she'd shared with Ryan in 4 years. The weeks crawled by. Elena went back to work full-time, with Marcus maintaining his tactical perimeter. She started seeing a therapist, Dr. Chen, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who didn't let Elena deflect or minimize. You're allowed to be angry, Dr. Chen said during their 3rd session. You're allowed to grieve the life you thought you'd have. You're allowed to be scared of what comes next. I don't want to be scared anymore. Then stop waiting for permission to feel something else. It sounded simple when she said it. Living it was harder. Adrian gave her space, but he was always there, making coffee in the morning, asking about her day, working late at the dining table while she read on the couch. They existed in parallel, orbiting each other, neither willing to break the fragile equilibrium they'd found. But the tension was building. Elena could feel it every time their hands brushed, reaching for the same thing. Every time she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. One night, 3 weeks before the divorce hearing, she found him on the balcony. The city stretched out below, a carpet of lights and possibilities. Adrian stood at the railing, shirt sleeves rolled up despite the cold, lost in thought. Can't sleep? Elena asked. He glanced back. Too much on my mind. She moved to stand beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Anything you want to talk about? Not particularly. Liar. His mouth quirked. When did you get so good at reading me? Around the same time you learned all my tells. They were quiet for a moment, watching the city breathe. Kyle filed a complaint, Adrian said finally. Claims Marcus assaulted him at the restaurant. Elena's stomach dropped. What? It's bullshit. Security footage shows exactly what happened, but Ryan's using it to try and paint you as the aggressor. Says you've got a violent boyfriend harassing his family. You're not my boyfriend. No, but that's the narrative they're building. Elena gripped the railing. Can they use that in the divorce? Davis doesn't think so. It's transparent manipulation, but it's going to make things messier. I'm sorry, this is my fault. How is any of this your fault? Because I left. Because I dragged you into this. Because Adrian turned to face her. Stop. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this. I'd choose it again. Why? You keep asking me that. Because I don't understand. You barely knew me. You could have just stayed a generous tipper and moved on with your life. Yeah, I could have. Then why didn't you? Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he reached out and traced the line of her jaw with his thumb, the touch so gentle it made her ache. Because when I saw you that first night, I saw my mother. The way she used to hide bruises. The way she'd flinch when my father raised his voice. The way she'd apologize for things that weren't her fault. His voice went rough. And I thought, not again. Not if I can stop it. Elena's eyes burned. Adrian. But somewhere along the way it stopped being about her. It became about you. About this stubborn, brave woman who kept showing up even when everything hurt. Who smiled at customers and made them feel seen while she was falling apart inside. He cupped her face with both hands now. You fascinate me, Elena. The way you survived. The way you're still fighting. I don't know what to do with that except make sure you keep surviving. I'm not that brave. Yes, you are. You just don't see it yet. She leaned into his touch, her heart hammering. I'm scared. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of wanting something good and having it turn bad. That's not going to happen. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise I'll never be him. I'll never hurt you the way he did. Elena searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the inevitable trap. But all she saw was Adrian, complicated and dangerous and utterly sincere. I believe you, she whispered, and then she kissed him. It was tentative at first, testing, waiting for the fear to kick in. But Adrian didn't push, didn't demand. He just kissed her back with a gentleness that undid her completely. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted. Neither do I. That's not very reassuring. I know, but it's honest. She laughed, shaky and real. Okay, we'll figure it out. Together? Yeah, together. They stood on the balcony wrapped around each other while the city moved below, two damaged people choosing to be damaged together. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale. But it was real. And for Elena, that was enough. The morning of the divorce hearing, Elena woke before dawn to find Adrian already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching her. How long have you been there? She asked, voice thick with sleep. Not long. You were restless. Bad dreams? I don't remember. She sat up, running a hand through her hair. What time is it? 5:30. We don't need to leave for 3 hours, but I figured you'd want time to prepare. Prepare for what? I just have to show up and tell the truth. Yeah, but you have to see him, and that's not nothing. Elena's stomach twisted. In the months since she'd kissed Adrian on the balcony, she'd managed to push thoughts of Ryan into a small box at the back of her mind. But today that box would be ripped open, and she'd have to face the man who'd spent 4 years making her feel worthless. I can do this, she said, more to herself than to Adrian. I know you can. He reached out, threading his fingers through hers. But you don't have to do it alone. You can't come into the courtroom. No, but I'll be right outside. And the second it's over, I'll be there. She squeezed his hand. Promise? Promise. They had breakfast in near silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Elena changed 3 times before settling on a simple navy dress that made her look professional and put together. She stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Somewhere in the past 2 months, she'd started standing straighter. The permanent tension in her shoulders had eased. She looked tired, sure, but she also looked alive. Davis called at 8 to confirm details. Marcus arrived at 8:30 to drive them downtown. Adrian sat beside her in the back seat, not touching but close enough that she could feel the solid warmth of him. "You're going to be fine," he said quietly. "Stop reading my mind." "Can't help it. You get this look when you're spiraling." "What look?" "Like you're trying to disappear into yourself." Elena turned to face him. "And what look do I have now?" Adrian studied her face, his expression soft. "Like you're about to walk through fire and come out the other side." "That's a very dramatic assessment. You're a very dramatic person." She almost smiled. "I am not." "You absolutely are. You just hide it well." The courthouse loomed ahead, all concrete and authority. Elena's pulse kicked up as they pulled into the parking garage. "Remember," Davis said, materializing beside the car like he'd been waiting. "Short answers. Stay calm. Don't let his lawyer provoke you." "What if Ryan tries to talk to me?" "He won't. He's legally prohibited, and if he does, we document it and use it against him." They walked through security and up to the 3rd floor where family court convened. Ryan was already there, sitting with his expensive lawyer, looking thinner than she remembered but just as polished. When he saw her, his expression flickered through several emotions before settling on injured confusion, like she was the one who'd wronged him. Elena's hands clenched into fists. Adrian leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "He's nothing. You're everything, remember that. Remember?" Then he stepped back, and Davis guided her through the courtroom doors, leaving Adrian in the hallway with Marcus and a handful of other people waiting for their own personal disasters to be adjudicated. The next 2 hours were a blur of testimony and cross-examination. Ryan's lawyer painted Elena as unstable, vindictive, a woman who'd fabricated abuse claims to secure a better settlement. He brought up the incident with Kyle at the restaurant, suggested she'd hired Marcus specifically to intimidate Ryan's family. Elena sat through it with her hands folded in her lap, trying to remember Dr. Chen's breathing exercises. When it was her turn to testify, Davis walked her through the chronology of her marriage. The first time Ryan hit her, 8 months in. The escalation over the years, the fear that kept her trapped. She spoke clearly, methodically, refusing to cry even though her throat burned with the effort. Ryan's lawyer tried to break her during cross-examination. "Isn't it true, Ms. Voss, that you never filed a police report? Never sought a restraining order until after you'd moved in with your new boyfriend?" "I was scared, and he's not my boyfriend." "But you are living with him?" "I'm staying in a property he owns, yes." "How convenient. A wealthy man swoops in, provides you with housing, legal representation, security. What did you have to give him in return?" Davis shot to his feet. "Objection. Counsel is implying—" "I'll rephrase," Ryan's lawyer said smoothly. "What is the nature of your relationship with Mr. Castell?" Elena met his eyes. "He's someone who saw I needed help and offered it, without expecting anything in return. I know that's probably hard for you to understand, given your client's track record. Ms. Voss, I'm not finished." Her voice was steady now, stronger. "You want to know why I didn't report Ryan? Because men like him are very good at making you think no one will believe you, that you're crazy or weak or making it up. And they're often right. Look at what you're doing right now, twisting everything to make me the villain when all I did was survive." Ryan's lawyer opened his mouth, then closed it. The judge, the same woman who'd granted the restraining order, looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. "Any further questions, counselor?" she asked. "No, Your Honor." The proceedings wrapped up with closing statements. Davis argued for a clean split. Elena walked away with nothing from the marriage except her freedom, no alimony, no claims on assets. She just wanted it done. Ryan's lawyer pushed for a finding that Elena had abandoned the marriage, but even he seemed to know it was a losing battle. The judge took 15 minutes to deliberate. When she returned, her expression was impassive. I've reviewed the evidence and heard testimony from both parties. While there are conflicting accounts of the marriage, the medical records and photographic evidence support Ms. Voss's claims of abuse. The restraining order remains in effect. She looked directly at Ryan. Mr. Hale, you are to have no contact with your former wife. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. As to the division of assets, given the short duration of the marriage and the circumstances of its dissolution, I'm granting Ms. Voss's petition for dissolution without any financial claims from either party. You will each leave with what you brought into the marriage. The marriage is hereby dissolved. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Simple as that. 4 years reduced to a legal notation and filed paperwork. Elena stood on shaky legs. Davis was saying something about next steps, about making sure the order was properly filed, but she wasn't really hearing him. All she could think was that it was over. Actually over. She walked out of the courtroom in a daze and found Adrian exactly where he'd promised, right outside the doors, leaning against the wall with his phone in his hand. When he saw her, he straightened immediately. Well? Divorced. Something fierce crossed his face. Completely. Completely. No appeals? No strings? He has to stay away from me or go to jail. Adrian pulled her into his arms, and Elena let herself collapse against him for a moment, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne and the solid reality of him. You did it, he murmured into her hair. We did it. He pulled back just enough to look at her. How do you feel? Elena considered the question. Empty. Relieved. Terrified. Like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm still waiting to hit the ground. You're not going to hit the ground. I've got you. I know. They were turning to leave when Ryan appeared from the courtroom, his lawyer trailing behind looking harassed. Elena's whole body tensed. Ryan saw them and stopped. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the courthouse hallway. Ex-husband and ex-wife, abuser and survivor, two people who'd once promised forever and delivered destruction instead. Elena, Ryan said quietly. Adrian moved between them immediately. Walk away. I just want to talk to her. You're not allowed to talk to her. You're not allowed to look at her. Walk away. Ryan's expression hardened. This isn't over. Yeah, it is, Marcus said, appearing at Ryan's shoulder. And you need to leave before we call security. For a second, Elena thought Ryan might actually try something. His hands clenched, his face flushed with rage barely contained. But then his lawyer grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the elevators, murmuring something Elena couldn't hear. She watched him go, this man who'd once been her whole world, and felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, not even relief. Just a vast, echoing emptiness where he used to live in her head. You okay? Adrian asked. Yeah, I think I am. They left through a side exit to avoid any more confrontations. In the car, Elena stared out the window and tried to process what came next. She was divorced, legally free. No longer bound to Ryan by anything except shared history and bad memories. So why did she feel so unmoored? What are you thinking? Adrian asked. That I don't know who I am anymore. I spent 4 years being Ryan's wife. Before that, I was someone trying to become Ryan's wife. I don't remember who I was before all of that. Then you get to figure it out. No pressure. No timeline. Just like that? Just like that. Elena leaned her head against the window. I need to do something for myself. Make a decision that's just mine. Okay, what do you want to do? She thought about it for a long moment. I want to go to the ocean. I haven't been since I was a kid, and I want to see something bigger than all of this. Adrian nodded and leaned forward. Marcus, change of plans. We're going to the coast. Now? Elena asked. Why not? You just got your life back. Might as well start living it. They drove for an hour and a half, the city giving way to highway and then coastal roads that wound through sparse vegetation and salt-worn buildings. When they finally reached the beach, it was nearly deserted. Just a few people walking dogs and a couple of surfers in the distance. Elena kicked off her shoes and walked to the water's edge. The sand was cold beneath her feet, the wind sharp with brine and possibility. Waves crashed and retreated, following rhythms older than any human pain. Adrian stood beside her, hands in his pockets, letting her have the silence. I used to think love was supposed to hurt, Elena said finally. That if it didn't consume you, it wasn't real. Ryan made me feel alive in the worst way possible, and for a long time I confused that intensity with passion. And now? Now I think maybe love isn't supposed to hurt. Maybe it's supposed to feel like this, standing next to someone and not having to perform or pretend or hide, just existing together, and that being enough. Adrian turned to look at her. Is that what this is? Love? Elena met his eyes, and for the first time in years she didn't hesitate. I think it could be, if we let it. And if it scares you, then it scares me. But I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. Adrian reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so familiar now that Elena leaned into it automatically. I'm not going to promise you perfect, he said quietly. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to be difficult and possessive and probably overprotective. I've got my own damage that I'm still working through. I know. I'm not looking for perfect. What are you looking for? Someone who sees me, really sees me. Not the version I perform or the person I used to be, just me, as I am right now. I see you, Adrian said, and I'm not going anywhere. Elena kissed him then, salt spray on their lips and wind tangling their hair. It was messy and imperfect and exactly what she needed. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and grinning, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Come on, let's go home. Home. The words settled in Elena's chest like an anchor. Yeah, she said, let's go home. 3 months later, Elena stood in the empty restaurant space and tried to envision what it could become. You're sure about this? Adrian asked from behind her. No, but I'm doing it anyway. The space was small, tucked into a neighborhood that was just starting to gentrify. It needed work, new floors, updated kitchen equipment, a complete overhaul of the dining area. But the bones were good, and the price was manageable with the money Adrian had insisted on loaning her. Loaning, not giving, she'd specified. I'm paying you back. I know, you're stubborn like that. Elena turned to face him. I need to do this myself, build something that's mine. I know, and I think it's going to be incredible. She'd kept working at Aurelius while she planned, saving every tip, researching business permits and health codes and liquor licenses. Marco had been supportive in his gruff way, even offered to help train staff when she was ready. You're going to fail, he'd said cheerfully. 90% of restaurants do, but you're too stubborn to be part of that statistic. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Don't mention it. Dr. Chen had been more diplomatic. This is a healthy way to channel your energy, building instead of just recovering. Is that your professional opinion? That's my professional observation. My professional opinion is that you should be proud of yourself. Elena was trying to be. Some days were easier than others. She still had nightmares about Ryan. Still flinched sometimes when Adrian moved too quickly. Still caught herself apologizing for things that didn't require apologies. But she was working on it, learning to recognize the difference between past trauma and present reality. Adrian was learning too, learning when to step in and when to step back. Learning that protecting her didn't mean controlling her. They fought sometimes, real arguments where they both said things they had to apologize for later. But they also laughed and cooked dinner together and fell asleep tangled around each other like they were trying to fuse into one person. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. What are you going to call it? Adrian asked, gesturing to the empty space. Elena had been thinking about that for weeks. Voss. Just Voss. Your name. My name. Not my married name. Not someone else's vision. Just mine. Adrian smiled and it transformed his whole face. I love it. Yeah? Yeah. They stood in the empty restaurant, sunlight streaming through dirty windows, and Elena felt something shift in her chest. Not healing exactly. She was starting to think healing wasn't a destination but a process. But something close to hope. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? That I'll mess this up. That I'm not ready. That you'll fail and prove Ryan right about you being worthless? Elena flinched. Yeah. Adrian turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Listen to me. You are the strongest person I've ever met. You survived 4 years of abuse and came out the other side still capable of kindness and hope and building something new. If this restaurant fails, it won't be because you're not good enough. It'll be because the restaurant business is brutal and unpredictable, and sometimes things don't work out. That's not very reassuring. But it's honest, and you deserve honesty. Elena leaned into him, letting his solidity anchor her. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention. Liar, he laughed, and the sound echoed through the empty space, filling it with possibilities. Voss opened 6 months later on a rainy Tuesday in November. The first night was chaos. Orders backed up, a server dropped a tray of wine glasses. The dishwasher broke halfway through service. Elena spent most of the evening running between the kitchen and dining room, troubleshooting disasters and trying not to have a complete breakdown. But they made it through. And the next night was slightly less chaotic, and the night after that she actually managed to enjoy herself. Marco came to the opening and brought half the staff from Aurelius. Not bad, he said, looking around at the intimate dining room with its mismatched chairs and exposed brick. Pretentious, but not bad. It's not pretentious. You have cloth napkins. That's not pretentious, that's civilized. If you say so. Adrian came every week, always sitting at the same corner table, always ordering whatever she recommended. He never made a fuss about their relationship, never demanded attention, just sat and ate and watched her work with an expression that made her heart ache in the best way. One night, 3 months after opening, she slid into the chair across from him during a rare lull. Busy night, he observed. Crazy night. We're fully booked for the next 2 weeks. That's good. That's terrifying. What if I can't keep up? What if the quality slips and... Elena. She stopped, taking a breath. You're spiraling again, Adrian said gently. I know, sorry. Don't apologize, just breathe. She did. In through her nose, out through her mouth. The restaurant hummed around them, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversation, the sizzle from the kitchen. Her restaurant. Her chaos. Her dream. I love you, she said suddenly. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. They'd been dancing around the words for months, neither quite ready to make it that definite. You don't have to say it back, Elena added quickly. I wanted you to know. You saved my life, not just from Ryan, but from the version of myself that thought I deserved to suffer. Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. I love you too. And for the record, you saved yourself. I just helped with the logistics. That's a very humble assessment. I'm a very humble person. Elena laughed, and it felt like breaking the surface of water after being submerged too long. You're the least humble person I've ever met. And yet you love me anyway. Yeah, I really do. They sat like that, hands clasped across the table, while the restaurant moved around them. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a fairy tale ending where everything became perfect and easy, but it was theirs, messy and complicated and real. A year after the divorce, Elena was closing up the restaurant when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Silence on the other end. Then a voice she'd hoped never to hear again. Elena, it's Ryan. Her blood went cold. You're not supposed to contact me. I know, I needed to say something. I don't want to hear it. Please, just give me 1 minute. She should hang up. Should call Adrian, call the police, document the violation. But curiosity held her frozen. 30 seconds, she said. Ryan exhaled, shaky. I'm in rehab, court-ordered after I got a DUI. They've got us doing this whole accountability thing, making amends. He paused. I'm not calling to make amends. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I was a monster, and I'm sorry. Elena leaned against the restaurant counter, trying to process. Are you asking me to absolve you? No, I'm asking you to believe that I know what I did, that I'm not delusional enough to think sorry makes it okay. His voice cracked. I took 4 years of your life and filled them with fear. I made you think you were worthless when you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm sorry. Not because it changes anything, but because it's true. Tears burned Elena's eyes. You're right. It doesn't change anything. I know. But I believe you. I believe you're sorry. I just don't care. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Fair enough? Don't call me again. I won't. I mean it, Ryan. This is the last time. If you contact me after this, I'm reporting it. I understand. Elena ended the call and stood in the dark restaurant, shaking. After a moment, she dialed Adrian. He answered immediately. Hey, you okay? Ryan just called. She heard him moving, probably standing up. What did he say? Are you safe? I'm fine. He apologized, said he's in rehab. Do you want me to come over? Elena looked around at her restaurant, the tables she'd picked out, the art on the walls she'd chosen, the menu she'd crafted, her space, her achievement, her life. No, she said. I'm okay. I just wanted to hear your voice. Adrian's tone softened. You sure? Yeah. I'm going to finish closing up and then I'll meet you at home. Home. She still got a thrill from saying it. Okay, I'll be waiting. After she hung up, Elena finished her closing routine, counting the register, wiping down tables, locking the doors. The call from Ryan sat in her mind like a stone, heavy but manageable. She'd meant what she said. His apology didn't change anything, didn't erase the bruises or the fear or the years she'd spent thinking she deserved it. But maybe that was okay. Maybe closure didn't require forgiveness. Maybe it just required moving forward and refusing to let the past define the present. She left through the back door, setting the alarm and triple-checking the lock. The street was quiet, just the distant sound of traffic and a dog barking somewhere. Normal city sounds. Normal night. As she walked to her car, Elena thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Broken and scared, sleeping on a bathroom floor and planning an escape she wasn't sure she'd survive. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone she'd known once but no longer recognized. She'd learned things since then, that strength wasn't about never falling apart, that love didn't have to hurt to be real, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was ask for help, that healing wasn't linear or neat or complete, it was messy and ongoing and worth fighting for anyway. Ryan had taken a lot from her, but he hadn't taken everything, and the parts of herself she'd rebuilt, the restaurant owner, the survivor, the woman who loved Adrian Castell with clear eyes and an open heart, those parts were stronger than anything Ryan had tried to destroy. 2 years after leaving Ryan, Elena hired her first full-time manager. She'd been running herself ragged trying to do everything, cooking, serving, managing, bookkeeping. Adrian had been gently suggesting she delegate for months, but she'd resisted. Letting go meant trusting someone else with something she'd built. It meant admitting she couldn't do it all alone. But the woman she hired, Carla, a 40-something former chef with a no-nonsense attitude and a wicked sense of humor, made it easy. You're controlling, Carla said during their second week working together. I prefer detail-oriented. You prefer micromanaging, but I get it. This place is your baby. You want it to be perfect. Is that so wrong? No, but nothing's ever perfect, and you're going to burn out if you don't learn to share the load. Carla was right, of course. Elena started taking Mondays off. Then Tuesdays, too. She trained herself to not check her phone every 5 minutes, to trust that the restaurant would survive without her constant oversight. It did. In fact, it thrived. With more free time, Elena started exploring things she'd put aside for years. She took a pottery class and was terrible at it, joined a book club and actually enjoyed discussing novels she would have never picked on her own, started running in the mornings not because she needed to, but because she liked the way it cleared her head. She reconnected with an old friend from college who'd reached out after seeing the restaurant's Instagram. They met for coffee, and it was awkward at first, too many years and too much left unsaid. But by the end, they'd made plans to meet again. I'm proud of you, her friend said, for getting out, for building this, for not letting him win. Elena had smiled. Thanks. I'm proud of me too. It was a small thing, being proud of herself, but it felt revolutionary. At home, the apartment had officially become home somewhere along the way. Things with Adrian continued to evolve. They'd had their share of fights, usually about his tendency to be overprotective or her habit of shutting down when things got difficult. But they were learning each other's rhythms, figuring out how to be partners instead of rescuer and rescued. One night, Adrian came home looking thoughtful. What? Elena asked from the couch where she was reading. I've been thinking. That's always dangerous. He sat down next to her. I want to start a foundation for women leaving abusive relationships. Provide legal help, housing assistance, job training, the kind of resources that would have made your escape easier. Elena set her book down. Adrian, that would be incredible, but it's a huge undertaking. I know, but I've got the money and the connections. I just need the right people to help run it. He paused. I was thinking you could be on the board, if you wanted. Her throat tightened. You want me involved? You're the only person I know who actually understands what these women need. Not from theory or research, but from lived experience. Your perspective would be invaluable. Elena thought about it. Thought about the woman she'd been, desperate and terrified with nowhere to turn. Thought about all the other women out there right now, trying to figure out how to escape their own versions of Ryan. Yes, she said. I want to help. Adrian smiled, brilliant and genuine. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. They spent the rest of the evening planning, tossing ideas back and forth, building something that could actually make a difference. And Elena realized that this, using her pain to help others, turning her worst experiences into something constructive, this was what moving forward looked like. Not forgetting, not pretending it never happened, but choosing to let it mean something. 3 years after this divorce, Elena was featured in a local magazine's Entrepreneurs to Watch section. The article talked about Voss's success, the unique menu, the atmosphere she'd created. It mentioned her previous work at Aurelius, but nothing about Ryan or the abuse. Just a brief line about overcoming personal challenges that Elena had approved beforehand. Adrian framed the magazine and hung it in the restaurant. You're going to embarrass me, Elena protested. Good. You should be embarrassed by how amazing you are. That doesn't make sense. I don't care. I'm proud of you, and I want people to know. The restaurant continued to grow. They expanded the dining room, added a small bar area, started doing weekend brunch. Elena hired more staff, including a sous chef who was talented enough that she could actually take vacations without worrying the place would burn down. She and Adrian went to the coast for a long weekend, stayed in a bed and breakfast with an ocean view, spent their days walking on the beach and their nights tangled together in sheets that smelled like lavender and salt air. I never thought I'd have this, Elena said one night, her head on Adrian's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Have what? Peace, safety, someone who loves me without needing to own me. Adrian's arm tightened around her. You deserve all of that and more. I'm starting to believe it. Good. It's about time. They were quiet for a while, just breathing together. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for everything. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For not giving up even when I was difficult. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You changed my life. He tilted her face up to look at him. We changed each other's lives. That's how this works. Elena kissed him, slow and deep, trying to convey everything she felt through touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, even when you're being difficult. I'm not difficult. You absolutely are. She laughed, and it echoed through the small room, mixing with the sound of waves crashing outside their window. 5 years after meeting Adrian, Elena stood in front of a room full of women and told her story. It was for the foundation, Castell Recovery, they'd named it, and this was one of their quarterly support groups. Women in various stages of leaving abusive relationships, all looking for hope that life could be different. Elena had been nervous about speaking publicly, but Adrian had encouraged her, and Dr. Chen had agreed it might be helpful. So she'd written down her thoughts, practiced in front of the mirror, and shown up. I spent 4 years believing I deserved to be hurt, she said to the room. That if I was just better, quieter, more accommodating, he'd love me the way I needed to be loved. It took me a long time to understand that nothing I did would ever be enough, because the problem was never me. It was him. She saw recognition on several faces, nods of understanding. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I'm not going to lie to you, it doesn't immediately get easier. There were days after I left when I almost went back, when the fear of the unknown felt worse than the fear of him, but I didn't go back, and every day that I didn't, I got a little bit stronger. More nods. A few women were crying quietly. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Only you can decide when and how to leave. But I'm here to tell you that there is life after abuse. Real, full, complicated, beautiful, complicated, beautiful life. You can rebuild. You can heal. You can learn to trust again, to love again, to be yourself again without constantly monitoring every word and action. She paused, looking around the room. It took me a long time to believe I was worth saving, but I am. And so are you, all of you. No matter what he's told you, no matter how broken you feel right now, you are worth saving. And there are people who want to help. You just have to let them. After she finished, several women came up to thank her. One, a young woman, maybe 25, had tears streaming down her face. "How did you do it?" she asked. "How did you find the courage?" Elena thought about it. "I don't think it was courage. I think it was desperation. I reached a point where I was more afraid of staying than leaving. And I got lucky. Someone saw what was happening and offered help. But the truth is, courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway." The woman nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you for sharing, for being honest. Thank you for listening." Adrian was waiting outside when the meeting ended. He pulled her into his arms immediately. "How'd it go?" "Hard, but good. I think it helped them. I know it helped me." "I'm proud of you." "You're always proud of me." "Because you keep doing things worth being proud of." They walked to the car hand in hand, the evening air cool against Elena's face. She thought about the woman she'd been, the one sleeping on bathroom floors, the one who thought her life would never be more than survival. That woman felt like someone from another lifetime now. Elena had learned that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about integrating it, taking the broken pieces and building something new. She would always carry the scars of what Ryan did to her, but she also carried the knowledge that she'd survived it, and that made her stronger than she'd ever been before. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked. "That I'm grateful. For you, for the restaurant, for this life we've built, for getting the chance to help other women find their way out. You've come a long way. We both have." He squeezed her hand. "Want to get dinner? Somewhere other than your restaurant?" "Are you implying my restaurant isn't good enough?" "I'm implying that even you need a break from your own cooking sometimes." Elena laughed. "Fair point. Where do you want to go?" "Wherever you want." "Your choice." "Your choice." Such simple words. But they meant everything. Because Elena Voss had spent years having no choices, no voice, no power over her own life. And now she had all three. She had a successful business, a man who loved her without controlling her, a purpose that extended beyond just surviving. She had her life back, and this time she wasn't going to waste it. "Let's go to that little Italian place you like," she said. "The one with the terrible wine but amazing pasta." "Terrible wine?" "Their wine is perfectly acceptable." "Your taste in wine is terrible, but I love you anyway." Adrian grinned. "I love you too, even when you're being a snob about wine." "I'm not a snob." "You absolutely are." They bickered playfully all the way to the car, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. Contentment, maybe. Or just the simple pleasure of being with someone who knew all her flaws and loved her anyway. The past would always be part of her story. Ryan, the abuse, the fear, it had shaped her in ways she was still discovering, but it didn't define her. Not anymore. Elena Voss was a survivor, a business owner, a partner, a woman who'd walked through fire and come out the other side not unscathed but unbroken. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.